Welcome to our session that is speaking about trauma and well-being and how our teachers can be seen as healers. So to start it off, just to frame it, the World Health Organization had some scary stats that they recently released. It said about 1 billion children across the globe experienced either sexual, emotional, or physical abuse and violence within just the last year. Now, if you think about this and our understanding that violence isn't the only thing that causes trauma, and it isn't only violence that happens within close proximity that causes trauma. There are other things that create trauma in the young person's experience. Systemic issues such as racism, such as patriarchy, and other systemic challenges that young people face across the globe do contribute to the traumas that we see young people have as they walk into a classroom. And all of these significantly impact how a young person learns. Now, if we think about that and all of the things that we're walking into our various classrooms with, what does it mean our teachers need to be equipped with? What understandings and practices and mindsets do they have to have in order for them to be trauma sensitive, in order for them to be trauma informed in our context? So this is kind of what brings us to the conversation today. And our lovely panelists are working on the ground across the continent, working with communities using contextualized practices and experiences that are underpinned by neuroscience, so everything starts from the brain basics, and it has a running thread. All the work that you'll hear the ladies speak about has a thread of understanding this very important fact that we've come to understand in the neuroscience of trauma and well-being, which is a single consistent loving relationship can be one of the biggest protective factors of trauma and toxic stress. So I'll repeat that because it's very important. And that is, a single consistent loving relationship can be one of the biggest protective factors of trauma and toxic stress. And this is what underpins today's discussion. If you think about the single relationship for a young person in a classroom, what can our teachers be to these young people? So to help unpack this today over the next few minutes is our lovely panel that I call our dream team. I'll introduce them all in turn. On my far left is Dr. Bukola Ogankua, who is a doctor, a population health researcher, pediatric psychologist, and child trauma expert of suburban cares. She has trained thousands of teachers in Nigeria in trauma-sensitive practices. Welcome, Dr. Bukola. Next to her, we have Yvonne Gachi, who is a critical psychologist and senior program coordinator of Green String Network, which is an organization based right here in Kenya that works with communities to heal social and collective traumas. She's also a master trainer and psychosocial trauma consultant. Welcome, Yvonne. And right next to me, we have Flora, our flourishing Flora, who is the head of training and leadership development at Teach for Nigeria, where she oversees a team of over 500 fellows in remote schools and communities across Lagos and Ogun State. Welcome, Flora.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies, for being here. And the conversation today will try to address two things. First is the why this is an important topic, and why it matters for us to be engaging with it from the teacher's lens. And then we'll get a little bit into the how. We'll speak about practices that have been seen on the ground to be impactful within this space. And to just kick us off, Dr. Bukola, to lay the foundation for the conversation today, could you just define for us what is trauma?
In 2005, defined trauma as an exceptional experience in which dangerous and powerful events in a person has overwhelmed their capacity to cope. It's when that moment that you're unable to breathe. In the survival, where our body is built to survive, our brain is there to rescue us. But when you totally lose that capacity to cope, that event is traumatic. And it comes in many shades and colors. The ACE study puts it into interpersonal and things that occur in our environments that can be traumatic. If we start from the environment, climate change, those big fires can be traumatic. Floods can be traumatic. If you move into the family system and things in our environment like community violence and wells that are breaking out all around children would be traumatic. Then moving to the family system, things in the family home, which we simply put as family dysfunction, domestic violence, divorce, a family member being incarcerated, of parents bickering back and forth about things around the child, alcoholism and other substances. All those things can become traumatic to a child. Now to the child or to the person, interpersonal violence, abuse, which could be physical, emotional, or sexual. And you could have neglect that could be physical or emotional. Those are potential things that could cause trauma.
Thanks for that, Doc. Can you explain to us how it actually affects the brain, though?
When we're exposed to overwhelming things, the body produces a hormone called cortisol. And it is that cortisol release that actually is toxic to the brain and also to many organs in the body. It triggers other things to happen. Your heart beats very fast, your intestine shrinks, because at that time when you're trying to survive, it's not the time to digest food. And that's why you see children that are exposed to repeated trauma end up with ulcers. It affects the kid's bones, because the more that you have cortisol in your blood, the calcium that is being ingested is unable to be deposited into the bone, so they fracture easily. They have colds and common things. So it's not just the brain that cortisol really is toxic to. It's toxic to the entire body.
Mm-hmm. And how common are these toxins and injuries in your context?
From the study that we conducted in Nigeria, in southwest Nigeria, which is Lagos, Ibadan, and Shagamu area, of the 800 plus children, 40% of them were reporting abuses of different forms. And the most common is verbal abuse, which is emotional, belittling a child, telling them they're not going to amount to anything. The prevalence, if you look at this report, an average classroom, if you have more than 3 out of the 10 points, an average classroom is showing about 30% of them are already traumatized. If you break this up into private and public school, which is the next slide, these are the children in public school. Almost 60% are traumatized. So now when you have a classroom of children who report 3 or more traumatic events has happened or continue to happen in their lives, they're unable to learn, because the brain develops from the bottom up. The brainstem neuroscience has given us a unique insight to see how learning would occur. And the brainstem and the middle brain is where the children are developing at the time of elementary school. So when they don't feel safe, when they don't feel loved, an injury occurs, they revert back to behaviors that are bizarre. That's their way of coping. That's their way of telling you something is wrong. And this brain structure, imagine it as an upstairs and downstairs brain, where the brainstem and the limbic system is where that emotional reaction occurs. Once those two are triggered, that upstairs brain, where thinking, organizing, planning, impulse control, is offline. They cannot learn. That's where learning occurs. So the key is, if you have children, as many as 60% are traumatized, you have to intentionally help them regulate before the upstairs brain can be switched back online. So regardless of what we have in terms of curricula, good environment, beautiful structures, calm, cool environment, if that brain is offline, they can't learn. Not that they're unwilling, they're just unable.
I mean, thank you for that, Dr. Bukola. And it's making me think about the importance of context and how much the context and the environment around a young person actually affects how they appear in the classroom. On that note, Yvonne, could you maybe take us a bit into the history of Kenya and how this affects how it is that young people come into the classroom?
Just to add to what Dr. Bukola was saying, when you look at the history of our country, formal education came to us by the way of being colonized. And it's interesting because I had just started to have this conversation. So what brought formal education into this country was the fact that we were colonized and we needed skilled administrative workers to help with the running of the colony. So when the colonization happened and there was need for skilled labor, then our forefathers or our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers were taken out of their homes, placed into missionary schools, and actually taken through formal education. This played two roles. One, it's made them more economically empowered, probably than the people they left back at home, so created that difference in social class. And the next thing it did is it took them away from their homes and gave them some sort of power. So they were more powerful than even the others. But then, even in that moment, as they served as administrators, they were given education that was just enough so that they could do the work, but not raise questions. So when we were gaining independence and we had to be left with an education system that would then carry us through, the education system that we took our children through at that time, the one that they used to do an exam called CPE, if you're Kenyan, that at that point, the people who were being groomed, the students then were being groomed to be managers, to manage what was left, the systems and the structures that had been established as a result of colonialism. They were to come in and manage that. And when the government did not grow fast enough, we changed the education system so that we could now create workers who would then do the lower cadre jobs, who would create employment for themselves. And so we created the 844 system that we again butchered and cut and paste to suit what we needed at that point. The truth is that the education system has been used to serve a certain purpose at every point in this country. And maybe that goes for many other countries, African countries as well. Initially, it was a tool to get people out of their homes and to bring that difference in the social class, but also to ensure that you're given enough, but not enough to question. So the culture of silence started from there. The culture of not being able to question started from there. And if you went through the 844 system and you're here and you're Kenyan, you know that to be a good student, you had to be quiet, you had to sit still and not ask too many questions. To this day, a disciplined child is defined as a child who does not ask too many questions and does not move around too much. Then you're disciplined. In fact, I said in the other session, and I will say it again, there's a word that I used to think is our mother tongue. It was called bad manners. You did not, anyone would say that word, my grandmother, the person, the shopkeeper, and you knew when you were told bad manners, you have done something bad. You are simply ill-mannered. And it used to be used as a phrase, whenever you heard that word, you immediately felt shame. And it's because the education system was used really as a tool to quiet us down, to oppress us, and to stop us from questioning what it is we needed to question.
I mean, you're speaking about from the Kenyan context, yet so much of that resonates for myself as a South African who grew up in the South African education system. This idea of a child must be seen and not heard, and being silenced, and silence as the marker of being a well-behaved child. It's something that resonates so much. But as you're both speaking, it's making me think about how all of the work that you're doing and the context you're building is speaking about the importance of self-awareness, this understanding of your own context and the context of others in order for you to make the right decisions. And on that note, I'd like to bring you in, Flora. You work at Teach for Nigeria with lots of coaches and fellows, basically young people who are eager to get into the classroom and do impactful work with their learners. How do you start to teach them this idea of self-awareness, and how do you begin to embed that in the way in which they behave?
Okay, thank you. So coming off the trauma and well-being sensitive program we had last year with Teach for All, part of our project is to design a way to cascade this learning. Usually, we will go directly to the fellows to say, okay, we've learned this thing. We want you to be trauma sensitive. We want you to know this. But we thought about it. What about the coaches? What about the senior coaches, the program administrators? They are the ones working with these fellows. If we go directly to the fellows without them understanding who they are, even in the context of trauma, that may be when the fellows are asking them questions, they may not have answers. So we decided to design a training around trauma-sensitive classrooms, trauma-sensitive practices with the coaches, senior coaches, program managers, everybody in the training unit. The idea being that they need to understand themselves first, even as you can't give what you don't have. So when fellows start asking questions, you've gone through the process of understanding your own trauma. So in that session, we had everybody from the training unit, the 30 of us, had to go through the same training, even an abridged one, because for that trauma sensitive, I think it was 6 months program, but we abridged it for us to also learn about ourselves. And then everybody has to do like a system mapping of who you are. And then we asked everybody, go back to year 14 or year 16 or whenever you can remember, to relive what happened to you during that time in terms of education. Maybe you wanted to go to school and there were no opportunities for you to go to school at the time. Maybe there are lots of things that you needed to relive. We had some of us who had opportunities for education, but then there are lots of things that prevented them. And then there are also people who do not even have those opportunities to go to school. And you look at it, those things we are seeing in our classrooms today, the trauma that we are seeing, some of us, even coaches, fellows, they've experienced that. So by the time we had that training, in fact, it was so emotional that one of us, one of our coaches, couldn't even join the breakout rooms because she broke down. She started crying, and everybody went on breakout room. I stayed with her. It was so traumatic for her to remember some of the things that really affected her education at the time. So it makes it easier. This is self-awareness. So I'm going to go back to these fellows to tell them to go and observe what is happening in the classroom. But I know myself. I know I've gone through this. So it's easier for me to say to fellows, oh, if this child is not coming to class, it could be from the parents. It could be from the fact that they've not had breakfast. It could be, there are lots of other things. So that training really made it easier for us, for coaches. Now, the assignment will be go and cascade this learning. So it's not just us now having to train. So when we now brought all the coach fellows together to have this particular training, it's easier for the coaches to say, oh, I've gone through this. I understand you. I hear you. I see you. Because they also know that some of these things happening now, I don't think there's anything new in terms of trauma that we've not seen, even some of us adults here, we've experienced. And then if you look at the cohort of fellows we have, about 80-70% of them had experienced loads of things from their childhood. Is either poverty, is either violence, is either an alcohol father or a mother, is either born in a disintegrated family. So when you start remembering those things, which you might have forgotten, but by the time you are in a space where someone says, talk about it, remember those things, you are now seeing those little things that on a normal day you've why are you not in class? Why are you not this? You are now starting to remember. So it was important for us at Teach for Nigeria to start with the coaches, and then we'll now go down to the fellows. And then the coaches are also helping the fellows to do their own understanding of what would happen to a child if they are not coming to class. How would they understand and deal with those situations?
Yeah, that's powerful work and difficult work. It sounds like you're helping them unpack the stories of their lives and the stories they've told themselves about their lives. And I'd like to bring you in here, Yvonne, because you do a lot of work in storytelling. It's at the heart of a lot of the work that you do. And I told the other session as well that Yvonne is probably the best storyteller that I know next to my grandmother. But Yvonne, can you tell us a bit about how you use storytelling to help people unpack some of this work and begin to start recognizing it in their mindsets?
Yes. Thank you for that. And just listening to Flora and thinking about the student who the fellow who walked away and could not join the breakout rooms because the story was too close to their heart and they needed the support and the love and care at that particular moment. I think about how to get individuals into that space where they can confront themselves and confront those stories that they know about themselves or those things that they experienced, but more often than not are at the buried in the deep in our heads and deep in our hearts because they are too traumatic and too painful. It makes me think of telling stories in an unthreatening way. So if you allow me, I want to tell you a story. Long time ago, you see, we're near the national park. When this part of this building used to be the national park as well, even the road. So that long time ago, when the lions used to eat grass. Do you know there's a time lions used to eat grass? And the animals lived in harmony. The giraffe and the monkey were very good friends. And these two families grew up together here in the savannah. So one hot sunny afternoon, it was as hot as it is today, maybe even hotter. The giraffe was walking, taking long strides, looking for a pond to cool himself. And the monkey was jumping tree to tree next to the giraffe. And finally, the giraffe got to a pond and put its feet in and made a sigh of relief. It was finally starting to cool off. The giraffe was very happy. And the monkey asked the giraffe, "Uncle Giraffe, how deep is the water?" And the giraffe said, "It's up to my knees." So the monkey, excited, jumped into the water and started to drown. "Save me! Save me, Uncle Giraffe!" So Uncle Giraffe put out his hand and saved the monkey. And the monkey was mad. "Uncle Giraffe, you lied to me. You said the water was up to your knees." And the giraffe said, "Yeah, the water is up to my knees. Not up to your knees, up to my knees." How many times have we felt like the giraffe? That even if we told our own truths, it was never good enough. It was never true enough. Because somebody else always took it out of context. The monkey never considered that probably the giraffe was taller than it. Or maybe the giraffe should have considered, "But cousin monkey, you're too short, you'll drown in the pond." But he never considered that. And how many times have you felt like the monkey? You've been told the truth, but then the truth looks like a lie because you also took it out of context. And these are some of the ways that we use storytelling to bring hard conversations into the room. Because when you ask somebody, "When have you felt like the giraffe?" they can think about a million ways. And they can start with the most non-threatening story to tell of days that they have told the truth and felt like they were not heard. But then they can go into days that they felt like the monkey, when they have been told the truth and they have felt like they were lied to. And it is taking the angle of storytelling and using art to process these difficult emotions that we walk around with, these traumatic situations that we find ourselves in.
That's powerful. Your truth is not my truth, but it doesn't make your truth untrue. And I think that speaks to a certain mindset that a person has to understand that and appreciate it, right? To appreciate that two truths can be true at the same time. And I'm wondering about our teachers in the classroom, and if we think about this mindset that they need to make and the shift towards understanding the multiple dynamics of truth within a classroom setting. I'd like to bring you in, Dr. Bukola. What mindset shift do teachers need to make in order for them to lessen the impact of trauma and toxic stress?
Thank you. We've had the luxury of and the opportunity through the Lagos State Commissioner for Education, who is here with us, to train over 11,000 teachers in Lagos State through a private-public partnership. And one of the greatest difficulty they have is large classrooms. and the mindset of that child is doing it on purpose, or that child is not willing to learn, or that child is bad. My philosophy in my practice and in my experience over 40 years is that there is no bad child. I've never seen one. But I've seen too many children doing really bad things because of what happened to them. That is the mindset shift that every teacher must have. That the behavior you're seeing, the arson, the destruction of property, being defiant to teachers, cursing at each other, fighting for no reason, is because something happened to that child. And so that mindset has to come through what we call a journey of healing. Teachers are healers, and they can be healers. It starts from the beginning, becoming trauma aware. During that phase of development of a teacher to become a healer is for you to get the information, the knowledge about trauma. My hope and prayer for those who are here as people in leadership, policy makers, is to dedicate resources to have every teacher and all adults who are in contact with children to learn the neuroscience of trauma. And it's not just listening to 1 hour of tape. Yes, you get information, but you need the knowledge with the skills. That's phase one. As you learn more, you become empathic and move into the next phase, which is trauma sensitive. Now you know, now you recognize in children, you are able to identify and refer that child for more help. You are able to do actionable things to support that child at that moment. Sometimes all they need is a hug, but don't hug a child without asking, can I give you a hug? Because hug for some children who are traumatized, especially those who are sexually raped or sexual assault of any form, may be triggering or re-traumatizing. Then you move from trauma sensitive to becoming trauma responsive. That is when your attitude, your school culture, your practices in school, your policies are now designed to put the narrative of trauma into day-to-day activities that you're doing in school. That also should apply to homes, to communities too. So being trauma aware, trauma sensitive, now you're evolving to that change point. Finally, as you get coached, mentored, practice, you become trauma informed. A trauma informed school organization is one in which every member, every adult in that community, in that organization, are aware, they're sensitive, and they're able to give palliative support to a child who may be in distress. An example is one. Imagine a child gets off the bus, head dropped, teary-eyed. The first person he has contact with is a trauma-informed security guard. He has three options. If that person is not trauma-informed, the first thing he could say, hey, hurry up, you're late, go, go, go. Because the focus is be in school, go and learn. To a regular other person will say, I notice you don't look happy. Well, feel better, go. That's appropriate response. You acknowledge that kid, but you haven't given that child a purpose to remain in school that day. A trauma-informed gate man would say this, hey, shall I say you're sad? You're even teary-eyed. You must be going through something. I'm so sorry about that. But promise me this, that you're going to get the good day today. You're going to enjoy everything during sports. During recess, you're going to play with your friends. And guess what? Today is going to be a good day with a big smile on his face. What do you think that child got? Somebody cheering him her on to say, I'm going to make it. Whatever it was I brought from home stays at the gate. And that child runs up. That is a trauma-informed gate man. And why did I use the gate man example? We tend to think everything begins and ends with the teachers. God bless you all teachers. You are paid little, you are given too much to do, and then we ask you to become healers. We are all in this together. Your gate man, the person in the kitchen, the janitor cleaning the floor, everybody must be tuned in to become sensitive to trauma, to be tuned in to be responsive to trauma so that we are not inadvertently re-traumatizing children in school. Thank you.
Sounds like another fun community that's placed on the entirety of the discipline. Not just the teacher, it's not just the gate man, but everyone has a role to play. But everyone has a role to play in this journey of a child healing and in this journey of us protecting children in our different spaces. I'm actually saying Dr. Bukola is like raising a lot in me. It sounds like a long journey, right? To go from awareness to sensitivity to informed. It's something that's very important for the teachers to want to stick the course.
Yes.
But I'd like you to bring us into the how a bit more. How can they start utilizing practices in the classroom that will help them go on this journey?
I give actionable things, little things that teachers can do. I call one 2x10 Connect. Everything we do as human beings, we're all relational animals. And we need relationship. Right from when we're babies, attaching to an adult is what gives us all our social cues and develops all the neural connections in our brain. Whether it is a good connection, which means we're having that serve and that give and serve return relationship with the adult, or it's abusive. The connections are being made, but I'm hopeful it is positive relationship. And when you have that one-on-one with a child, 2 minutes every day for 10 days, that's all what 2x10 Connect is about. Nothing about school, nothing about academics, nothing about the behavior that's getting you angry about that child. All you're trying to do is to get to know that child. Know their name, what's their interest, what game, what football team they're supporting, what is it that makes them happy in school. Growing up, what would they like to be? By the time you have that 10-day walk with them, and I always say don't do it in the classroom, because your desk as a teacher has always been the place of discipline. So once you sit behind that, the child is already trembling. Take a walk with that child. Have that one-on-one without distraction from other people in that class. If you do that consistently for 10 days, most children will get to know you. And they see you as seeing them as a human being. They recognize you as caring enough to take the time for them. A child that believes the teacher loves them are the ones that are successful. If the child feels you hate them, that upper brain switches off. They're there in body to mark the register and they're out. So that's one. There's another approach called the nurtured heart approach. It's an approach that Dr. Howard Glasser, he himself was one of those kids called bad children. But this approach is unique in the sense that it helps build relationship and transforming challenging children. It starts with what is called 3 stands, 3 principles. Absolutely no, meaning I, the teacher or the person, will not leak my own negative thoughts, behaviors, or action to the child. And I will not lock horns with that child when they have their either activated upset and they're angry. Locking horns means trying to have the last say. Because teachers want to show, I'm the boss and you better listen. You can never win that war. Each time you give it, they move it a notch higher. And when it's no longer verbal, they start to throw things. So there's no point activating children. Once the next step is absolute yes. That is, I'm going to do the best in me to bring out the potential of that child. So you have a child who's not answering your questions. It's quiet. Recognize the effort that child made to be in class. I see you, John, you're a bit quiet today, and you're not taking questions. I hope you join us later. Peter, what about you? Let's talk about it. But I know when you're ready, you're going to tell me what you want you think about what we're discussing. And as I'm talking to Peter, he's like, she listened and she noticed me. I must have an idea to, before you know it, John is beginning to say, me, call me now. Don't forget John, go back. So now you're ready, join us, let's go. And he gives his own opinion. That's how prosperous being absolute yeses. The last one is absolute clarity. You have to be clear about what you're asking a child. I had an experience in Shagamu. It's one place out in Ogun State. The teachers were all complaining the children are rude, they don't greet, I said, so how do you want to be greeted? A room of about 100 teachers, they gave me almost 50 different versions. So I said, so how do you think your students know what you want when all of you don't know what you want? Some say, well, I expect them to kneel down and greet me. I said, greet you in English or Yoruba, which one did you explain? Oh, we didn't even decide that, okay. Another one said, a little courtesy is enough. The boys should lie down. I said, okay, as a school, you all need to decide what your mode of greeting will be. And you model it for the students so they know this is what our school expects as greeting. And then they know what the rule is. Video games is the best. They have clear rules. A foot on the line is a foot on the line. You cross and he cuts you off, right? You get, you're out. But if you follow the rules of video games, what do you get? Bells and whistles of celebration when you each stage and you move on. That's why kids love video games. So why are you not the teacher being clear what you expect? So that's what Nurtured Heart tells. Then there's the other part of Nurtured Heart that actively recognizes the child. Some are experiential recognition. As I mentioned to John earlier, sorry I gave you that name. I said to him, hey, by the way, I noticed that you're quiet and you're not participating, but I do appreciate your being in class today. Your presence means a lot to me, so I'm going to go to Peter. And I'll be right back when you do that. What I did is active recognition of his effort to be in school that day. I didn't go to, why are you quiet? Don't you have something else to say today? That is, really, you are actually making that child miserable because you don't even know what that child's going through or what's going through in their mind. But because I gave active recognition and I gave him the opportunity to join when he's ready. So he's taking care of himself. That's why he's quiet. You see some children, they're rocking themselves. That's a child trying to reset their brain. What do we do as teachers? Sit still. What is the rocking doing to you? It's not disturbing you, but that child is resetting their brain. That's why it is essential that every teacher understands the neuroscience of trauma. Thank you.
That's so powerful, Dr. Bukola, and yes, Rado was gone. And then you can tell the passion that comes with this conversation from your end of the world and from the work that you're able to do in the communities. And it's really making me think about the work that you do, Yvonne, at Institute with the young minds who are coming excited to be doing new things, to make impact in communities. And these young people are also hoping to build these strong relationships that Dr. Bukola is speaking about, where the young person can feel comfortable around, be it the coach or the fellow. How do you begin to message this at Institute with your fellows and your coaches?
Thank you so much. So we start off with the trainings. There are two parts of the trauma-sensitive trainings. One is with the child, another with the fellow. We start off with the fellow, and then we get to the child. One of the three things that everybody knows at Institute, even as coaches, as fellows, is, am I loved? Am I safe? What can I learn? So if I start with, am I loved? Am I safe? Then you will get to a point where you are asking, oh, I'm ready to learn. Because if you don't get, and we practice this as well, so with our morning affirmations, with our reflections in the morning, we want them to feel loved. And then there's a banner on the wall that says, love and safety are preconditions for learning, for teaching, for leading, and for impacting. So as you're moving around, you're knowing that this place is the place for love and for safety. And then we get to the second part of the training that has all the fellows do a system mapping for their child. You've not met that child. You are just coming into the institute. But we are making you to understand that there is this child. Already there's a session that has gone through committee immersion where you've learned about the kind of child you are going to meet. Now we ask you to give a child the name. So we ask you to give Imagine that child in the community where you're going to. Give this child a name. It could be Yvonne, it could be Bukola, it could be anything. And then start imagining what are the systems around this child that would make this child do not want to learn. Then you could start with the parents. Maybe he or she is an orphan. Then you can talk about the religion. Maybe she's from Islamic and they said, oh, at 13 you need to go and marry. And then you are thinking about this child. Oh, maybe she's been abused. Or maybe she's even taking the responsibility of the father. Because some of our children, we've seen that because of the situations in the community, they would go to the market first. They would go to the stream first. They would even try to sell things to be able to like come to school or even feed themselves. So you see that when you start thinking about that child and then start thinking, how do I make this child feel loved in the classroom? How do I make them feel safe? It begins to dawn on you that before I even do A, B, C, D on the wall, I need to say, how are you? Did you eat? Did you, how was the night? How was it coming to school? Or how do you get there here every day? Can I escort you? Can I do something like this? So it's an everyday practice. With the students mapping, the fellow is now beginning to start thinking, okay, what are the things I'm going to do as I get into the classroom? And you start from the institute where you start thinking about mantras. Even though you're going to build your own mantras, oh, I am this, I am positive and all that, we encourage them when you get into the classroom, understand, do the system mapping of all the children in the classroom. And then understand how to build this mantra so that you are not assuming something from somewhere. Sit down with them. What do you want to achieve? So by the time you are constantly thinking about the love a child needs, the safety that they want, you are going into the community to understand how their life is evolving. And this makes a lot of sense. So it's a constant thing that we are doing. So with the training and with also the way we exhibit. So at Teach for Nigeria, we are not saying, oh, coaches, you eat here. Oh, head of training, you are eating here. Everybody is on the queue. Everybody is eating at the same place. So they are feeling loved. They are feeling this attention that we are giving to them. And then it's a constant thing reminding them that when I get into those communities, I'm not going to segregate myself. Oh, I'm a fellow. I'm here to like make your life better. No, they are also making your life better because as you contribute to them, they are contributing to you. So in the way we are trying to help everybody. So when they get into the classroom, they are not looking to make them have A, B, C, D or have 50%. They are first trying to build their emotional learning and making sure that they are loved, they are seen, they are heard. Thank you.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And I'm sure all the people who are fellows in this room today who have been through the fellowship are thinking, wow, that would have been a game changer to have at Institute. But I can't help but thinking about what one of your alumni said at the plenary. It's very common in Nigeria classrooms to have 120 learners in a classroom. Can you tell us about how you support the fellows in actually practicing these approaches in their various classrooms?
So it's all about building relationships, and that's one thing we don't play at Teach for Nigeria. Building relationship is very, very important, and we label it everywhere. First of all, we bring in experts who share how they've journeyed along, maybe building something massive without having to pay anybody. That means they will have to leverage on the network, on building relationships. And then when it has to like get to them going out of the fellowship, it's important that they are thinking, for everything that you are going to do, you are thinking that relationship is the currency. So they know, we tell them relationship is the currency for social change. You may want to raise money, you may want to raise funds, but for your BTC project, for making that impact in the classroom, you need to build relationship with those children. And that is very, very profound, and we don't play with it. I'll tell you a story of a fellow who, Adetomewa, when we wanted to place fellow in Makoko, we were skeptical because that's the first time we are placing someone in Makoko. Makoko, you have to use canoe. The school is on top of the water. In fact, the whole community is on top of the water. And it's very like a slum. And we had to ask. We don't want to say, oh, we place you here. We had to ask, who wants to go to Makoko? And she said, I will. Do you know how to swim? I'll learn. But because she wanted to make impact, because for every relationship we've talked about at Institute, the way we practice it with everything we've done, she really wants to go to this community that nobody wants to go to and really make an impact. And she did. When she got to the community, first of all, there's a distance between her and the children. One, everybody that comes to Makoko, the NGOs, they are coming to take pictures and to send to the World Bank or to UNICEF to say, oh, this area, and then they collect money to fix something. So the community themselves, when they see a stranger, they are wondering, oh, then them. Those people who want to feel that they want to make a change. So she started thinking, how do I make these community people, these children, see me, and that I'm not just that person who wants to come and take pictures, but I'm here to make a change, to help them learn. I'm here to build relationship. So she started, she understands Yoruba. The Makoto community understands Ego. She said, okay, I'm going to learn Ego. What did she do first? Learn their names. So for every child in the classroom, she learns their name in Ego. Rather than calling them blessing, she will call them their name in Ego. The children now said, okay, this is the first time we're experiencing this. And she continued, okay, I'm going to build a relationship beyond this classroom. I'm going to build a relationship with their parents. Unlike other things that we do, we now say, parents come to school. She now said, I'm going to call you. She'll collect the numbers of all the parents and call them to see, I'm here to support your people. That's building relationship, because she knows she cannot do it alone. You can bring the children up, do whatever you want to do in the classroom. They will go back home without the learning, without the love and support from the parents. They are not going far. So she started to deal with, okay, how do I bring the parents to understand that I'm here to support? So with the parents, she will call and say, what do you want from your child? What can we do better? And so the parents will start telling, oh, we are fishermen, and I feel that they should, even though they're going to school, at the end of the day, we feel that they will end up here, except you are going to do something that will make them leave this community. And she started thinking about, what can I do differently? And that's how she brought someone, a young child who couldn't speak English. But because of the relationship she has built, calling her by her name in Ego, trying to teach her English, inviting her father is a fisherman, but then her father says, you really made impact because of the relationship that you've built with my child. I'm going to go learn tiling, because with fishing, I'm not going to get the kind of money that will take this child away from this community. I want her to go global.